Hi, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of the IaC Podcast. My name is Ohad Maislish, and I'm going to be the host for today. Today, we're going to have not one, but two amazing guests, and we're going to talk about an open source that is very famous, very helpful in infrastructure as code. We're going to talk about Atlantis. So let's talk to our guests today. We have Pepe Amengual and Dylan Page. Hi, Pepe and Dylan.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for coming today and talking about Atlantis.
You're
So,
welcome.
for those in our audience that still don't know about Atlantis, maybe start with you, Pepe. Can you say a few words about Atlantis? Why should I care about Atlantis? What kind of problems does Atlantis help with?
hmm Yeah, so Atlantis is basically a GitOps automation tool to run Terraform. So there's always this question about moving security and infrastructure to the left, closer to the developers. And developers are always tied to like VCSs, like GitHub, Bitbucket, and so on. So when you create infrastructure as code in Terraform, in particular, you're going to create a repo. You're going to have a group and an org and so on. And so, what at some point will become natural is that, well, we have the code in Terraform here, but what about the output of Terraform? Do we have any insight of that? And that part of the GitOps workflow is what Atlantis helps you with. So the idea is that you use Atlantis connected to your VCS provider, and then that will basically trigger a Terraform plan from the code. And now the developer, in this case, will have an output of that plan within that PR that the developer created. So there is a direct feedback between the code that was created and the Terraform output, and what is going to look like in the Terraform state. And that actually end up in your PR. So the whole history behind it is set on that PR. And that allows you to then do other things, many other features. But in an essence, it brings the code and the state within the repo at the eyes of the developers and whoever is the review. So basically, your code becomes the source of truth of your infrastructure in the cloud.
Yeah, that's really important, because just code without the context of the state of the cloud resources, it might look like a helpful change request, but it can be very, very dangerous and risky. So we need to have
Correct.
we need to have some help before applying the code, before changing the cloud resources. We need to know better what we're gonna do. And Atlantis is a great, very famous open source, free. Important to mention it's free. That helps with that. Thank you, Pepe. And I now realize that I forgot to mention that both Pepe and Dylan are not just great users of Atlantis, they are the main maintainers of this very famous and important open source. Dylan, can you share more about what does it mean to be a maintainer of an open source?
Yeah, of course. Being a maintainer, a lot of times people think that, the maintainer is somebody who reviews the PR, commits code. You think, of an open source project, it's about the code. But really, it's so much more than that. A lot of times you're helping to foster a community. You have a lot of like-minded people who are trying to achieve the same goals through code. And it's not just being a developer. A lot of times maintainers get lost in reviewing PRs and getting into the nitty-gritty of reviewing code, but there's so much more in terms of the what people bring in terms of what they contribute to, whether it's if someone doesn't have Go experience, like Pepe said, when he started out, he didn't have Go experience. He learned Go to be able to contribute to the project. Other people simply, can help the project by organizing office hours, doing much more higher level, uh, uh, organization of the project. And so I think, being a maintainer is much more than that. You're fostering a community and helping people come together to solve common problems.
Yeah, that's awesome. And looking now at the GitHub page of Atlantis, it looks like Atlantis has more than 6,000 GitHub stars and more than 300 contributors. That's awesome. By the way, do you ever have some kind of physical gathering of the contributors, or it's strictly online?
Well, we do have the office hours that actually Dylan started, and
Mm-hmm.
that's brand new. So we are trying to bring the people there, and we have the Slack channel, which is I think is the main way we communicate so far. And obviously the issues within GitHub. Is there any other avenue we have that you can think of?
No, there hasn't been any physical gathering, nothing organized at a convention level or, something, like KubeCon or CNCF or anything like that. But, that's one of the things as a maintainer coming in, such a great project, when you go through, a changing of the guard and, maintainers coming in and out, and, projects evolve over time. One of the things I think Atlantis has been missing is, just what I've talked about earlier, someone to help organize the community along those grounds. And so that's why I started the office hours, trying to help the contributors, organize better across, much more avenues rather than just, chat channels and GitHub issues and, trying to develop more organic ways of communication to help them drive the project more. Because a lot of our features and code are contributor, provided. And so it's not, the maintainers have, contributed code, but, a lot of that still comes from the contributors. So trying to help foster them and enable them is, what I think is the next step for the project. And like you said, trying to figure out how can we improve these gatherings and, the possibility of having a physical gathering in the future.
That's really impressive. Becoming more and more mature as a famous project. Let's zoom in on Atlantis. So let's say I'm a Terraform or TerraGrant developer, and I'm running things locally, Terraform Plant, Terraform Apply. Maybe I even have some cloud credentials running around my laptop, and my CISO is not my best friend. And then it's it sounds like you're laughing because it's true.
Because it happened to me at some point.
it happened to all of us, I guess.
Yes.
And then you or your manager or the security team, somebody realizes that it's time to be more professional and to have a solution. One option is to go to your Jenkins or GitHub Actions, so just have like a centralized place to run things, but that's not like GitOps or infrastructure as code oriented. So you go with Atlantis, and that provides you the value that you mentioned earlier about the early discovery within your pull request. Now, let's say I'm a GitHub user, but maybe not a GitHub. I'm also GitLab or Bitbucket or others. Does Atlantis support all of source control management platform? Is it partially supported? What about GitHub.com and GitHub Enterprise, or all of the different nuances within source control management? Dylan, what is the current status? If I want to become an Atlantis user, what do I need in order to use that?
So we have a broad, I would say, matrix of support for, version control systems. We support Bitbucket, we support, GitHub, Cloud and Enterprise, we can support GitLab, we support Azure DevOps. The one thing you'll see is while we support those, there will be varying degree of features across those depending on the different API sets. And one of the biggest struggles with those is that, majority of us are experts with one version control system. You don't have someone who uses all of them. So that's where a lot of our contributor focused, I should say, contributions come from, is people who run those version control systems encounter bugs that maybe have slipped because we don't have maintainers or regular contributors that use those systems. And so the support, I should say, the support matrix is a bit skewed just because of general usage. We tend to skew more towards GitHub, the more popular VCS solutions, whereas things like Azure DevOps and Bitbucket, while supported, don't have such a bit of a big feature set when it comes to things like auto merge or I think one of the new features we have now is being able to have emoji comments, the Atlantis server comments, status updates with emojis, things like that.
Sounds crucial.
Very crucial. So it's definitely you have a big splay or skew in terms of support, but we do try our best to have a baseline support model for the majority, if not all, version control systems out there.
Got it. And can I imagine that you still not really partnering with Atlassian or GitLab or GitHub Microsoft? They don't try to influence the project from any kind. It's pure community and driven from your users, right?
Yes, 100%.
Now, that doesn't stop them from contributing to us if they wanted to. If they wanted to actually improve support on their own BCSs and they want to create PRs, we're welcome to it. It will be amazing because, like Dylan says, it's really hard to keep up with. Like if we were a group of maintainers actually coding for Atlantis, keep up with the changes on the API, on the version control system is really, really hard. So if they're going to listen to your podcast, and they're PRs are welcome.
We welcome every contributor.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so let's say I am using GitHub or I'm using Bitbucket and I want to use Atlantis. What do I need to do? Is there like a Docker container image that I need to run somewhere on an EC2 or virtual machine, or maybe create a pod within a Kubernetes cluster that I have? What do I need to do in order to start using Atlantis and start having those automatic plans on pull requests and other capabilities that Atlantis offers?
So yeah, we provide Docker images and we also provide Helm charts. So on top of that, the docs pretty much clearly state installation instructions for those varying levels of infrastructure. It's completely self-hosted, as a free open source project. So we have, I would say, there's also community modules out there, Terraform modules that kind of set up Atlantis and the Docker images in ECS Fargate or in Azure or in GCP. So even the things that are not officially provided by us, like the Helm charts and the Docker images, there are community modules out there created by contributors that help people stand up Atlantis infrastructure fairly quickly through their hosting provider.
And what if I don't want to maintain something? I like the security that everything is within my network and I don't need to expose any secrets and credentials with another vendor. But let's say I'm kind of okay with that and it's not for production, or I don't know, I have preference of trusting a good vendor, but on the other hand, I don't want to maintain some Docker process to run on my VM or some pod running on my Kubernetes already busy cluster. Do you have currently or in your roadmap a plan to provide a service that runs Atlantis as a service for users to be able to just use it without the hassle? Maybe it's not a real hassle, but do you hear that requirement from users that would like to have managed free or cheap Atlantis version? Pepe, maybe you can comment on that?
No, I don't think that's going to happen. Although it's funny, if you look at the history of Atlantis and you look forward in time, and you will see all these companies like Scalar, Terramate, and so on, Spacelift. They all started by looking at what Atlantis did. and they evolve obviously as commercial products and SaaS solutions for that. And obviously they have enterprise features, but the way that the maintainers and kind of like the project is set up, it is an impossible task for us to do. Yeah. We are basically let's say 4 maintainers that are somewhat active, 2 very active, or 3 very active. So imagine trying to actually build SaaS and support it and all that, and there is no contributions to our work. It's fully volunteer work.
Yeah, that's great. Can you share maybe what is like the biggest last improvement that was implemented in Atlantis, the last most exciting improvement, besides the emojis?
Will you say, Dylan, that is the real-time logs? We'll say that was one of the biggest.
Yeah, the biggest change was the ability to actually see what Atlantis is doing when it runs Terraform and TerraGrunt. And it was a feature that essentially captures the output from Atlantis and then streams it via WebSockets to the user interface for people to view. So when people get a status check, or when they get just like you would with any other CI/CD system, there's now a link from that check, like when you click on it, and it takes you to the actual logs for that specific run. That has been something that a lot of people have really enjoyed, because there's definitely been times in the past where you don't get that feedback from Atlantis where it's running Terraform, but a lot of times, depending on the type of modules you're running, or especially if you're using things like TerraGrunt, it can kind of take a while. And so if you don't have access to the server to really view the process and the logs on the server side on the back end, you can kind of be in the dark for a while. Is Atlantis working? Is it stalled? Is it stuck? So the streaming logs really help improve that user experience for users in terms of knowing what is Atlantis actually doing with my workflow.
Yeah.
And the other kind of hidden feature that was released, not hidden, is in the docs, is the API. So there was an API release. So now we have a plan and apply API. And we are, and some people have implemented actually drift detection against that API in form of GitHub Actions hitting the API to create automatic PRs and things like that. It's not a feature we offer, but there is opportunities to use the API to actually do far more complicated workflow things within Atlantis. So that's another cool feature I would like to mention.
Yeah, that leads to my next question. I wanted to talk about extensibility of the Atlantis capabilities. So it's very helpful to see the plan on the pull request. By the way, sometimes the plan fails. So that's a good reason not to merge that pull request. But even if the plan doesn't fail and it looks reasonable what it's going to do, sometimes it's not that good to merge that pull request. And there are some solutions like static code analysis, such as Checkov, TFSec, Terrascan, or maybe even policy as code, such as OPA, Open Policy Agent, and going back to Go and Rego. Okay, so maybe not exactly the same, but kind of the same. If I want to use more validations in my pull request, what should I do with Atlantis in order to basically add some more logic to it?
So we do support. You mentioned OPA. We do support. We run comp tests or policy comp as supported steps in the workflow. So Atlantis supports not only the typical plan apply workflows, but the ability to set up custom workflows so that if you want to use those steps as part of your validation before you allow apply to run, you can. But it also allows for people to essentially kind of get very flexible and customizable with calling scripts or overriding those steps to do exactly what they want, maybe with their own tooling. I think that's very vital to make sure, you're not really forcing people to utilize one specific tool. And part of what makes Atlantis so powerful is that people can utilize Atlantis to a degree that allows them to incorporate their own tool chain into the workflow, and customize that workflow that fits their needs at their company.
Yep, makes sense, because it's not just executing the plan; it's more about how this plan eventually is going to affect your cloud resources.
Mm-hmm.
Before we leave, is there anything important or interesting about Atlantis that you think the audience should know about, and we haven't discussed it today?
I would say so. I have some announcement to make, because
Please.
first of all, like we were talking at the beginning about how the challenges of being a maintainer. Definitely, we are looking for more maintainers that are actually Go developers to help out. There's definitely something that we are looking for all the time, and people that are committed to the cause of like helping Atlantis to become better, and not people that will join and then leave very soon. So we need more long-term commitments. I have been already 2 years here. Although I'm not a Go developer, I'm trying to do my best. Dylan has been for a while, so hopefully we will keep growing as a community, which will help the development of the project big time. Especially the reason why I bring this up is because, for example, the drift detection feature has been stalled because of lack of developers. And the release of version 1.0 of Atlantis has been stalled for that too. And for that, we need help. And so for sure, that's one of the biggest things that we need to be able to actually help all the community, because there's so many people that runs different type of workflows and use cases that we cannot keep up with all the features. And then there is a stability problems that comes with that. So if we have more developers and focus on maybe PCS supports and things like that, it helps everyone. So for sure, that's one of the main things.
Yeah, Pepe is right. The over time, the project has grown immensely. People have contributed code. Maintainers have come and gone. But with that growth, things, you start to get regressions. As you add more features on top, the foundations start to weaken a little bit from everything piled on top. So that is why I essentially kind of started the office hours and started to really try to approach it from a holistic viewpoint, not so much from a code problem, but from an organizational problem, where, I would basically, shout out to everybody, come join the office hours, come join our Slack, if you, like Pepe said, if you can commit and you're a Go developer, we would really have you as a maintainer. But my goal, even though I have a Go experience, has been less on the code front, but more on the organizational front, trying to organize the community a bit better, trying to figure out what are the biggest problems Atlantis users are facing, what should we prioritize, trying to focus on, what regressions are there, what do we need to fix, and where does the project go from here? What problems does Atlantis best fit in this environment and market where, you have Terraform Cloud and you have EMV0 and you have all these essentially, paid competitors, and so as an open source project, where things are volunteer, sometimes you can't keep up. So I think, trying to figure out, what is a core feature set that Atlantis provides and focusing on that would be vital for the project's future.
Yeah, so big shout out to everybody to join the community, become a maintainer, especially if you're a Go expert. Join the office hours. I took a look now at runatlantis.io. That's the website of the project, right?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. So go visit runatlantis.io, learn more about Atlantis, and contact this great team of contributors and maintainers. And together we can all build a very helpful project to help infrastructure automation. Thank you so much, Pepe, and thank you so much, Dylan.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Talking about Atlantis and Terraform and infrastructure as code. And thank you, everybody who listened to the episode today. If you liked this episode, please follow us on Twitter, on LinkedIn, in Spotify, and all of the other channels for you to consume this podcast. Thank you very much. I was Ohad
Thank you very
Meislich,
much.
and see you in the next episode of the IaC Podcast. Bye-bye.
Bye.